Good morning. I want to discuss today a journal article from Trinity College Dublin, which was published in the International Journal of Tropical Diseases. And it concerns a very local and a very relevant problem to all of us, and that is the issue of dog soiling and parasites in dog faeces. I'll read out some of the article and then I'll discuss the findings. New research from zoologists at TCD has pinpointed park entrances and playgrounds in Dublin as hotspots for roundworm eggs, with subsequent analysis strongly implying they have come from dog faeces. The findings pinpoint locations of dog parks in Dublin for targeted interventions to reduce the risk of human infection. The roundworms of dogs, namely Toxocara canis, and cats, Toxocara cati, can cause hard to diagnose diseases in people. While most people do not become ill after coming into contact with them, the worms can spread to parts of the body such as the liver, lungs, eyes, where they can occasionally cause serious problems like difficulty breathing or loss of vision. Other research has also linked asthma, epilepsy and cognitive decline, which is quite interesting, to this parasite. New research published in International Journal of Tropical Diseases sought to identify the level of contamination by the numbers of roundworm eggs in the soils of 12 Dublin parks, and the most common species of parasites which were found, and the hotspot locations. And the key results included: eggs were found in 9 of 12, 75% of Dublin parks where soil samples were taken. Most eggs were located at park entrances, with playgrounds the next most common hotspot. The majority of eggs were potentially infective. Most were identified as Toxocara canis, linking their origins to dogs, dog faeces, Toxocara canis being the common dog roundworm. Dr. Jason Keegan from Trinity's School of Natural Sciences was first author of the published research article, and he said Toxocara is one of the most common parasitic infections across the world. While there are many potential routes of infection, it's widely believed that the most common one for people is coming into contact with soil containing infective eggs and then accidentally ingesting them. The new research specifically pinpoints hotspots in Dublin's public parks where egg counts are highest in soil samples, and that tells us where we need to target our intervention efforts by providing more signage, more bins and a means to clean up after dogs in these locations. We could reduce the level of contamination, which is the next step in the research. With that in mind, it's important to underline that many dog fouling reduction interventions are not assessed for their effectiveness in their implementation, so it's imperative that such an assessment is built into any plans for the future. Of the assessments that have been completed, we know posters made by school children can be useful, and so on. So I have a few points to make, observations in relation to that. Now, as a vet treating dozens of dogs every day, and obviously we prescribe and administer thousands of dog wormers every year to our patients. But the one observation that strikes me about this finding that roundworm eggs are so prevalent would be the rule that we apply often to vaccines, where we say that probably 50% of our patients are treated adequately, and 50%, unfortunately, the ones we never reach, we never get to, are untreated. And sometimes the people who are listening to our advice and listening to these podcasts, indeed, they're the people that we don't need to reach. And the people that we do need to reach are not likely to be listening. So therein lies the difficulty. So a couple of things about it. Dogs do need to be treated, obviously, more regularly for roundworms in particular, because roundworm is the commonest and it's the most infective. So it strikes me that probably 50% of dogs out there are inadequately dewormed. Another factor about that, well, there were two ways in which they're inadequately dewormed, in fact. First of all, there's the issue of, are they being dewormed frequently enough? And public health guidelines would state that deworming needs to be carried out monthly. That's the first thing. Secondly, are they being dewormed with an appropriate medication? There are medications out there that are available in pet shops, which are probably too weak and probably not adequate. Thirdly, we don't know, there isn't the research there currently to show level of resistance in the roundworm population is at the moment to dewormers, and therefore which treatments are the most adequate. But my advice to pet owners would be that the ones that are prescription only and are available from the vets are likely to be the most effective, and the veterinary staff are best placed to ensure that the dosage given is correct, that the frequency, the advice around how often you should give it, that will be more correct coming from a veterinary team. And thirdly, that the medication, the product you're using, will be the most effective. And fourthly, that the product you're being given is the most suitable for you and for your pet. Because nowadays we do say that this advice needs to be focused, needs to be customised, that the risk for every pet, the risk for every type of dog is different, and the advice should be tailored accordingly. So that would be my observations around the deworming in itself. Another level of advice would be that obviously not enough people are picking up after their dogs, and that's a shame, and maybe fines and interventions and policing in that regard needs to be stronger. Thirdly, I would worry that there is resistance out there in the worm population, and that would be a big concern, something I'd like to see researched and looked into a little bit more closely. And lastly, on the subject of parasite detection in faeces, the good news out there is that an Irish company called Telenostic, based in Kilkenny, has produced a new user-friendly machine for sale into veterinary practices, a machine called the Parasite, currently in widespread use in equine or horse practice and large animal farm animal practice, and now being adapted software-wise into an Oversight pet model. So, new model of a testing machine from Telenostic called Oversight Pet, just coming on the market for veterinary practices to do regular and easy and frequent pet faeces testing for parasites, for worms. And that's really effective. That level of testing, because it'll tell us which worms are in the faeces, and it'll tell us whether or not your pet does need to be dewormed more frequently. So, coming from Telenostic in Kilkenny, an exciting product which will improve our ability to detect parasite eggs in faeces and implement an appropriate, suitable and tailored deworming strategy. So the future, as I see it, of deworming is that our deworming protocols would become more tailored. In this way, we would deworm more effectively, we deworm with the correct product, and we become part of an overall picture to prevent resistance against our deworming products into the future. So good news coming out of an interesting and a worrying story. Take home message, folks, though, is do get advice from your vet today about deworming your own dog, and 50% or more of the pets out there, I would say, are obviously not being dewormed adequately.